How y'all doing today? Today's video, we're gonna talk about the Freedman's Bank, how millions were stolen from freed slaves. If y'all could, please like, comment, subscribe. Truly appreciate any support I receive on the channel. I'm gonna try to start doing every couple weeks or so where I do like videos on things that happen in history involving money. So History of Money episode 1, we're gonna talk about the Freedman's Bank. I gotta ask y'all though, do y'all remember talking about this in school? Me personally, I don't remember. Like, I ain't saying we didn't talk about it in school, but I don't remember talking about it. I remember talking about the Freedmen's Bureau, but not the Freedmen's Bank. And obviously back then around these time we had slavery as the big one, but I think this was something that was like very major, but it was like slipped under the cracks. So we're gonna shine some light on it today. And with naming the video, I was like, at first I was gonna name it the first black bank, but it wasn't black owned. So what we can say, it was one of the first banks that was designed to help black people. And we're gonna talk about like how it came about, the origin, did it work out? We're gonna really get into the details today. And if I say any of like, a fact wrong, please excuse me. Just politely correct me in the comments. It is a lot of information with this. So let's go ahead and get rolling. And what inspired me to do this video was the book, The Rise and Betrayal of the Freedmen's Bank Savings and Trust by Justine Hill Edwards. I read this book, and if you like black history or you like history in general, definitely recommend it. Like the way she talk about it, the timeline, it basically she make it feel like you in the 1860s when you reading this. So like I said, this inspired me to make this video today, and it also, I got a lot of my information from this book. So let's go back in time. We on time machine today. So we're going back 150 years. July 20th, 1868. It's hot, scorching. My boy just got off work. We trying to work some moves. So we got Ena T. Wright, black farmer from Alabama. And I like stuff like this because obviously if you from the South, I'm from South Carolina, so down south history, especially around this time in the 1860s, is just so negative, like slavery, racism, everything. But I like stories like this because we can shine light on black people doing good around these times as well. So we got Enon Wright. He was born a slave, but he bought his freedom for $900 in 1857. If you equate that to today money, that's around 31,000. So my boy had a bankroll. He worked hard and he saved his money, as y'all can see. So he's a free man, but this is Alabama. Think about all the stuff he had to deal with around these times. Racism, hatred, all that. So he was in Dart River, Alabama, but he was going to set up an account at the Freedman's Bank in Mobile. So it's about 9 miles away. Whether he walked or he used the boat, he got there. And think about this, like you a black man in the 1860s walking around with $900 on you. Like, boy, I think that's cool. I ain't gonna lie. So he walk in the bank, he get to the bank, he walk in, and he speak with the cashier. 29-year-old white dude named C.A. Woodward. And it's basically like setting up a bank account today. So obviously back then everything was on paper, but you got to fill out your information, set up your booking and all that. So he said he was black, he wasn't married, and he put some information about his family. He didn't put his employer because he was self-employed, so he his own boss. My boy, was getting it in, and he was a farmer, like we said in the beginning. So back then, the average person would put around $70 when they set up an account. But he put in $1,000. And today's money, that's 21,000. And then the same day, his brother came in to set up an account. So he put 600 in his account. So the Wrights were doing their thing. Like these black, hey, they was getting it in. I like that for sure. And this is the actual documentation of him setting up his account. I can't read cursive to save my life, but I could look like they say E9T right, July 20th, and he filled out his information. What do you see? Occupation, yeah. So yeah, this is the actual, when he came in and set up his account. So I think that's pretty cool. Like that's 150 years ago, but we still got that history with us. So that was 1868. That was just to give you a picture about like what was going on around this time. Now we're gonna really go about like how did the Freedmen's Bank come about? So like, we gotta go back a little bit more, beginning of the 1800s. We have these things called saving banks. and they were popular up north. Philadelphia, New York, Boston. They were created to help the poor people rise out of poverty, and I'm talking about rise out of poverty. Please, like I said, I know I'm a mess up, so just excuse me. And basically help the poor people rise out of poverty. And with savings banks, they're not the same as commercial banks. Like they weren't really trying to make money off of people. The people that started these were just trying to help people, like teach people to save, get people familiar with money. So we had by 1820, you had 10 savings banks in America, and this is one of the first one, the Philadelphia Savings Fund Society. And like I said, it's not the same as a commercial bank. More benevolent purpose. Like we're trying to help people save. We don't really want to make money. Banks make money off of loans and things like that. We ain't really doing that. We just trying to help people save money. So now we're gonna skip the 40 years. We got the savings banks in the early 1800s. They up north. They helping people save the money. Now we in the Civil War. It's on and popping. The Union, they fighting the Confederacy. Initially, black people could not fight in the war, but black people were pushing to fight in the war. They wanted to help fight. Obviously, they want to help fight for their freedom. So you had Frederick Douglass. You had different black people that were like pushing Lincoln, like, hey, So eventually, out of desperation and other reasons, eventually the Union started letting black people fight in the war. So we had the Confiscation Act of 1862 and the Militia Act. So by June 1865, we had 180,000 black soldiers that had fought in the war. But Pete game though, black people, they getting paid $10 a month, and they gotta pay $3 for their clothes. White soldiers, they were getting paid $13 a month. They ain't gotta pay nothing for their clothes. So the white soldiers getting paid $6 more than black people. Come on now. So eventually we had Congress, they approved, so black people getting paid the same as white people. So what do the soldiers do with their money? This is the 1860s. It's not like the day where you get your direct deposit, you get paid. They had physical cash back then. So what do you do with your money? Like, think about it. You a soldier fighting in war. You on the front line trying to you trying to dodge bullets, and you talking about you can't even think about money right now. So you had white soldiers. They were looking at this. They were like, okay, we can help them out. So they came up with the idea of military savings banks. And what these did is they basically, when black people get paid, they would put their money into the military savings banks. And this helped out a lot. So we had three military savings banks. We had the first one in New Orleans, and we had one in South Carolina, and we had one in Virginia. And this is a news article that I found that was talking about the military savings banks. So the first bank for Negroes was organized in 1864 in New Orleans by General M.P. Banks, and then military savings banks were established at Beaufort, South Carolina, and Norfolk, Virginia. So they helped black people with their money. We're gonna talk about that right now. So you had General Rufus Saxton. He was over the one in South Carolina. So he encouraged financial literacy, not just amongst the black soldiers, but the white soldiers as well. So he opened up the one in South Carolina, and I don't know if it was just the South Carolina branch or if it was all of them. Excuse me, y'all. But he had rules to help them save their money. So you couldn't, like, he had limitations on, like, how could you take out your money and stuff? Not trying to keep their money, but really help them, like, learn how to save and learn how to, do good with your money. And once you had $25 in your account, you gain interest. So, like I said, it worked out pretty good. With all this going on with the military savings banks, you got these white businessmen up north looking at this like, hold on, we might have a play. And then you look, by the end of 1864, the bank in Norfolk deposited $65,000. That's $1 million in today's money. And the bank in New Orleans was $24,000. That's $461,000. But if you think about that, that's really, really good, because you remember they started a year ago. So year or two and you making $1 million, that's good. So we got John Albert. He was born in Connecticut, 1807. He real big in the church. He was an abolitionist, so he wanted black people to be free. He supported that. So what John Albert was doing, his role, he really the mastermind behind the Freedman Savings Bank. So he with the soldiers during the war. Like, he following them around, he talking to them, he how you picking through their mind. And he seen a common theme with the soldiers, they didn't have a place to put their money. Like I said, you worrying about dodging bullets right now. We gotta worry about where to keep our money. Where you put in your pocket, where so he talking to him, they keep saying the same thing, like, I don't know where to put my money. And not even just the black soldiers, probably the white soldiers were having the same problem as well. And one time he was talking to one of the officers in Hitler Head. He showed him a truck with $75,000 in black soldiers' pay. And I'm assuming he was gonna take that to the Beaufort, South Carolina bank because they was the closest one. So John Albert got an idea. He like, okay, if black soldiers having the same thing, what about black people in general? Are they having this same problem? He was a he was trying to do good for the black people, but he was not a banker. He wouldn't have background in finance or anything like that. Keep that in mind. So he started working a little move. He go up north and he start reaching out to different white people and stuff, and he starts telling them like what's going on, what he experienced in the war. So he had a meeting on January 27th, 1865 in New York with over 20 philanthropists and businessmen about starting a bank that was for the black people. He seen how it worked with the soldiers and they military savings banks. Now he's like, let's do a bank for all black people. And one thing he didn't know was like black people were not that dumb when it came to money. Obviously, they weren't like the most. All of them weren't the most like crazy businessman, but they had the basis down because a lot of them were surprised that the military savings banks worked. Like they were like, man, dang, that worked. So they like, okay, cool. By the end of the meeting, he had everybody. They was like, okay, I like this idea. Let's start working a move for a bank for black people. There were no black people in this meeting though, which I think is like that's I don't know. I feel that like if we're talking about a bank for black people, shouldn't we have some black people in the meeting? Obviously a lot of black people didn't have money back then, but there were a lot of that did, and there were a lot that had, influence back then. So I think there definitely should have been some black people in the meeting if we're talking about black money. So he's still working his move. He had the first meeting, then he had two more meetings after that. So they wrote out the bank laws, all that. Now they got to get this approved by Congress. So he go to New York and Washington, and he talking to Congress about trying to get this set up. Got to put it in bold. Savings banks. Remember, savings banks. We're trying to help people. We're not trying to make money off people. Savings bank. No president, vice president, trustee, officer, or servant of the corporation shall directly or indirectly borrow the funds of the corporation for its deposits. It's a savings bank. You cannot loan money out in the savings bank. That's a big no-no. I'm going to keep saying that. You probably like, damn, why he keep saying that? The primary object of the bank was to receive and hold deposits by or on behalf of persons heretofore held in slavery in the United States or their descendants. Basically, what they're saying was this bank was my bad, y'all. This bank was designed for black people, particularly freed slaves, and getting them right with their money, like a safe place where they could keep their money. So you had Congress, they going back and forth a little bit, but eventually they did sign it, and we got the Freedman Savings Bank. The official name is the Freedman Savings and Trust Company. The same day you had the Freedmen's Bureau set up as well. Well, it was signed into law as well. They got the same purpose, but two different entities. And this one of the newspapers in New Orleans, and they put it in they're talking about it. So with setting it up though, Congress was moving a little bit too fast. The bank was not under vision of the newly formed OCC. So let's keep in mind, America was formed in 1776. Next year, 2026, it would be America's birthday of 250 years. So America, back then, in 1865, it's still a fairly new country. Like you still see, even today, like rules and regulations are still being formed. But back then, definitely, there was a lot of like unregulations and things. So the OCC was formed as basically like a bank oversight. The Freedmen's Bank was not under supervision of the OCC. And Congress, if we've been honest, Congress didn't pay attention to it too much as well. So the success of the bank was dependent on the trustees, like the people that over the bank, on making sure on them being good with people's money. And how they split the deposits of the money up. 1/3 of the bank's deposit was invested in stocks, bonds, treasury notes, and securities of the U.S. government. So the investments were very safe. Like you like, okay, Lee, we get it. It's a savings bank. We're not trying to make money off of it. So they're very safe investments. By investing in government debt, the bank was loaning money to the federal government, safe, low risk, stable investments. Another third of the bank, that's for like the operating expenses, paying people, When people want to take out their money, we keep that in there. Another third was in the available fund. Trustees could just to decide what they wanted to do with this money. And this is one of the newspapers in New Orleans again. What I want to emphasize is this last line. None of the trustees, however, except the president and vice president, shall receive any compensation for services, nor shall any trustee or officer or agent borrow or use in any way, directly or indirectly, any of the deposits or funds of this corporation. You can't not take loans out in this bank, savings bank. My last, I ain't gonna say no more. I'm gonna say it probably a couple more times. So we open up the bank. I didn't really get too much information on like the first day, like what the numbers was, but they did open up the New York branch, and they got their first deposit on May 16th. So you remember we had the military savings banks. We had 3 of those. So the military savings banks, they deposited their money from the military savings bank to the Freedman's bank. So we had 180,000 deposited in the summer of 1865. That adds up to $3 million today. So that's giving the bank a big boost. So despite the military is putting putting their money into the Freedman's bank, they did not start off that good. Like it was a slow start. So you got John Albert, you remember him? He was the big player, and you got Marlon Hewitt. So they like, okay, we gotta get some customers. We gotta get this rolling. So they go down south and they trying to get black people. They trying to convince black people to join the bank. So they go to various cities, and they go to cities that have heavy African American populations, which makes sense. And the main place they would go was to black churches because that's where black people would be at, like for meetings and stuff. So we got June 6, 1865. John Albert and Marlon Hewitt, they met with a group of black people at a church, the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And this is like back then, I think it was just getting into law where black people could have church by themselves. Like it was illegal for black people to even have church by themselves at one point. So now I think they're at a point where they can have church by themselves. So they got a meeting, and and basically it's the same thing as the soldiers. Like black people didn't have a place to put their money. Remember, it ain't like where you get direct deposit. You look on the bank app, you got your debit card. This was physical money. So you had an older man talking about burying his money, but he forgot where he kept it at. Or you had another man talking about he buried his gold, but it's stolen. So the black people really have a problem of like they don't have a place to put their money. But think about it. We're in the 1860s. So these black people like, okay, y'all white people coming in telling us to come bank with y'all. Man, y'all trying to get us. Like, we just got out of slavery. So they like on some like, are y'all Confederate people? Like y'all people that's against us? We gonna put y'all money in the bank and then y'all just gonna, take it from us. So that's how they feeling. But it was northern abolitionists and philanthropists that had created this bank. So they weren't really trying to take their money. They weren't really trying to take the black people money. But I understand that from the black people perspective of like, man, y'all trying to get us. So one of the most important questions in the meeting was asked like, what would y'all do with the deposits? Like what would the white people do with deposits? So Hewitt gave an answer, but he didn't give it, like he didn't tell the full truth. And basically it's like a little disconnect as you'll see throughout the story of like they thought it was like black people thought the bank was like on the faith of the government, and they believed into the United States government, so they were like, yeah, we with it. But like I said, the bank was on the faith of the trustees that was over the bank, of making sure they did the right thing with the money. Remember, it's not under the OCC, and Congress did not really pay attention to the bank like they should until it was too late. So this was in Richmond, Virginia. By the end of the meeting, they were sold. They were like, when we come, we're gonna set up an account. When the Richmond branch open up, we're gonna set up an account, and we're gonna tell all our friends about it. So word of mouth marketing. So the Richmond branch about to be on and popping. So that was in 1865. Hold on, let me go back. I forgot to mention one part. So in this meeting, they talked about letting black people work in the banks. So Hewitt and Albert, they went back to the other people, and they were like, hey, they want to work in the banks as well. The other trustees of the bank was not with it at first. And I think that's like, just shows you the times we were in back then. Like, these people, they wanted black people to be free from slavery, but they still didn't look at black people as equal. Let me go turn the light on real quick. I'll be right back, y'all. Hold up. My bad, y'all. So what we talking about? Okay, we're talking about black people working the bank. So initially, the white people that over the bank wasn't with that, and that just shows you like the times they were in. Of like, okay, they didn't want them to be slave. They didn't want them to be slaves, but they didn't look at black people as the same on the same level as them. Like sort of kind of like, hey, you my little bro. Like, so you gotta keep that in mind as well. So we got the meeting. They in the South, and basically they going to these churches. They going to these places. They convincing black people to join the bank, and it's working. So, and these are different type of advertisements you would see in the newspaper stuff. Would spend in the bank. They would spend $1,500 a year to advertise to the black people in the newspaper. So come one, come all, and deposit your money in one amongst the best institutions in the U.S. Thereby, save your money and get the interest. Cut off your vices. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't buy lottery tickets. Put the money you save into the Freedman Savings Bank. We call upon every male and female to deposit their little earnings. Remember, you are poor. Excuse me, my bad, y'all. Save your money. You want homes? Save your money. You want education? Save your money. You want to live comfortably? Save your money. Like, dang, as you can see, like, a lot of the advertisement had, like, racist kind of taste. Like, damn, you calling us bro, but you want us to, but that's just how they talk back then. Any man who saves only 10 cents a day for 10 years and buys land with his savings will be rich. I want to emphasize that one because back then black people equated freedom to buying land. So what the bank would do is basic marketing. You want freedom? If you bank with us, if you put your money into the bank, you will be able to accumulate land. You'll be able to save enough to buy land. So basic marketing, but it sort of kind of bites them in the butt, as you will see. And setting up an account. So we got July 2nd, 1866. This is about a year into the bank's opening. You got Miss Ellen Baptiste Rubin. She walked into the New Orleans location. So, like with E9, when you set up an account, you fill out the depositor application record. Name, marital status, if she had children, place of birth, residence. And it was a couple things that you could do optionally as well, like skin color, if you had a master, plantation, stuff like that. But the main thing I want to emphasize is she was a black woman opening up an account by herself. In America, until like the mid 1970s, a white woman couldn't even open up an account by herself without her husband. So to be black and you're a woman, going in, putting your money into the Freedman's Bank, that's pretty powerful. I like that. She was given a bank book. Bank book really important. This kept your record. They call it passbooks as well. Like this was your record of like, hey, you deposited your money. You need that. Remember, everything was on paper back then. We didn't really have phones, and we gotta keep remembering like what the times we were in. So in the bank book, you provided your information about the bank rules, like stuff like that. But it was your record as well, so you had to keep that. Oh, hold up, my bad. Okay, so everything going good. So the summer 1866, bank had set their total 616,000. That's $12 million in today's money. We got black people talking in the news. They were proud, like as you should be. Like they, they doing something good. They're elevating financially. But if you look behind the curtain, the bank wasn't really profitable. And most of the money, you remember we talked about the military savings bank. Most of the money had come from the military savings bank dumping their money into the Freedmen's Bank. Two reasons why the bank wasn't profitable. So they were going too fast. Like they were trying to get all these branches everywhere. And really, if you look at the numbers, it wasn't gonna sustain. And like I said, y'all remember Albert was not a bank person. So he's trying to he in his mind, he like, let me open up all these branches so I could just help as many black people as I can. But it's messing up the numbers of the bank. And the second reason, it was a savings bank. Like banks make a lot of money from giving out loans. What was one of the rules? This bank could not give out loans, so it's a savings bank. It ain't really here to make money. So sort of kind of like, we sort of kind of like had to change some things. And the bank will make money. Our has deposits, kept money in the bank. So we're gonna talk about that. So They put in over 600,000, but they withdrew 384,000. So they were spending their money, and they should have. Like, y'all told us to come. This is a safe place to put our money. That's what we're gonna use the bank as. Like, it's a safe place. And they were really big on buying land. So once the black people had enough money to buy land, they take their money out the bank, they go buy land. That's what y'all told us to do. So they can't really be mad at that. But like I said, it's hurting the bank. The bank, they were trying to aim for a 7%. If you keep your money in the bank, and you able to give what's it called, like interest payments. So they were trying to aim for 7% interest payments to the depositors, but they could only do 2.5%. So that made sense. Like, we just really can't do it. Our numbers not messed up. They realized like this one ain't gonna be able to last. Like, if we keep doing like this, we're just gonna have to close the bank down. Cause you gotta think, we got building expenses, we gotta pay cashiers, you got all these different things. And the bank was advertising land to wealth. So remember what I said, that's what black people wanted at this time. Any man who saves only 10 cents a day for 10 years and buys land with his savings will be rich. So if I go join the Freedman's Bank, I get enough money to save enough to buy some land. Y'all tell me if I buy land, I'm rich. I'm going to take my money out of the bank. I'm going to go buy land. Y'all told me to do this. So they weren't keeping their money in the bank. Remember, like, black people, they weren't dumb when it came to money around this time, but they weren't like super duper all up on investing either. So they didn't really care about the interest payments. They just wanted to use the bank as a safe place to keep their money. They didn't want their money to grow with the interest payments, things like that. They didn't really know about that. At this time, they looked at cash as king, which I still think about that today. But that's for another video for another day. They would use cash to buy land, tools, relocate, business, things like that. So we gotta make some changes. We gotta get this thing profitable. So by 1866, they had 19 branches. So these are all the different branches across the country. So you look at, they had a little bit everywhere. So I think it's pretty cool. December 1866, they're like, okay, we gotta slow down on opening locations. And they thought about closing down some locations. Like, they gotta get these numbers right. Albert was a bit, you remember, he wanted to open up a lot of branches in the beginning just to help as many people, but it wasn't good for the business side of things. So Albert, he wants to bring on some new trustees. So he want to bring some business players in. This is where we start shifting the scale a little bit. And he wanted to move the bank office to Washington. And this is for his personal reason as well, because Albert was also big with the Freedmen's Bureau. So he having to work with the Freedmen's Bank, the Freedmen's Bureau. You got to remember, he got a family as well, so he's not really able to see his family like that. So if he's able to move the bank to Washington, he can see his family more. So we got a meeting in 1866. Albert brings up Henry D. Cook. This is where the bank starts shifting a little bit of like, it's a savings bank. Now we're trying to get some money so we can keep the bank running. Henry D. Cook was like a big player around this time. He was, I guess you could equate him to one of one of the rich businessmen today. He him and his brother they became millionaires in the Civil War. So they were basically selling debt to the government to help fund the war, and they got really, really rich off of that. So they millionaires, they big players around Washington, they big names. So Albert like, okay, if I bring him on the team, he's smart, he could turn this thing around. So in April, so this is 1866, now we're in 1867. They moved the bank to Washington. So from New York to Washington, now we getting more on the political side of things. Like, we around the big players, we around the business, like it's getting politics involved. So, like I said, move changed the fundamentals of the bank, and that's Henry D. Cook right there. We slowly starting to get away from this benevolent saving idea. Like, now it's like, okay, we gonna turn it to a bank now. Now we're making money. So you remember the one when Albert went down south, he had Malin Hewitt with him. And Malin Hewitt got away from the bank once they moved to Washington. I think he was sort of kind of people like I think Malin Hewitt was one of the good people. Like I think he was starting to kind of see like, okay, if we go to Washington, we got these businessmen joining. Like the bank ain't really going, it ain't really. I don't think that's a good idea. So Henry D. Cook comes along, one of the trustees, and he gets to working. He looking at it like, okay, the bank was created to help black people be able to have a place to save their money. We looking at the numbers, these are just millions sitting in the bank doing nothing. So Henry D. Cook, he look at it like, oh, I'm about to these millions just sitting. I'm a businessman. I'm about to use these millions. We about to turn it up. He don't really care about helping black people save their money. He just want to use the black people money for more business. So he bring his business partners. We got D.L. Eaton. We got William S. Huntington. He started bringing in all these big players from Washington. So it's like, oh man, we ain't, nah, y'all had y'all fun the first 2 years. Now we about to get this thing rolling. So Eaton, before he got involved with the bank, before he came on as a trustee, he was already involved with the bank. On April 19th, 1867, Eaton had received the bank's first loan. Lee, why you put that in bold? What have I been saying from the beginning? It's a savings banks. We can't take loans out. You can't do that. That was very, very illegal. So keep that in mind. That happened on April 19th, 1867. An illegal loan of $1,000 with 6.5 interest, and he had about 7 years to pay that back. So in 7 years, he would have had to pay around $1,400 basically. And Eaton, he ended up becoming the bank's actuary. So as actuary, he's supposed to be looking at stuff like this when people ask for loans and stuff. He just received a loan. He come on now, like y'all see where it's going. Mm-mm-mm. Let's make it legal to loan. So we got March 1868. The bank has received and deposited $3,582,378. That's $76 million in today's money. That is a lot of money. And we started to have black trustees. So now we getting black people involved with trustees. We getting black people working. Cool. But they weren't really aware of like what's going on. Like they weren't aware of like the big players doing all this bad stuff. So in February 3rd, 1868, Eaton he writes a letter to Maine Senator Justin Morrow. So remember, in 1867, he received the bank's first illegal loan. So now he trying to get it to where the bank can make loans legally. So in this letter, he explained how the bank wasn't profitable and changes needed to be made with how the bank operated, which was true. The bank was struggling, so they needed to get it profitable, but they were trying to. We'll get to it. So when he wrote the letter to Justin Morrow, Maine senator, he was being strategic because Justin Morrow was a good person. He liked to help people that were less than. So when he wrote this letter to Justin Morrow, he like, oh, Justin Morrow gonna go to Congress and they're gonna be able to help me. So in a meeting on May 14th, 1868, the bank and the trustees they had a meeting and they talking about bringing up loans and they lending money out, letting the bank be able to use money and available funds to loan when an investment opportunity came up. They said they would only lend to people with adequate assets. Adequate assets. So with the rules, with the rules, they had basically the rules set up is like only people with real estate twice the value of the loan could get loans. Y'all see how that's bad? Because who doesn't have real estate at this time? Black people. So black people put their money in this bank, but they can't loan their own money. I think that's y'all come on now. Am I tripping? So we got okay, let me break that down. So you got let's say I want a loan of $1,000. Let's say I'm a white business person. They'll only give me a loan of 1,000 if I have $2,000 in real estate. So okay, let's keep rolling. You feel me? So they brought up being able to borrow money, and Alfred he let this go through. Who's in the so Alfred let this push through to the finance committee. Who's in the finance committee? Henry D. Cook, Eaton, Huntington. So of course they gonna be like, yeah, let's do it. So on June 16th, 1868, Eaton sent this proposal to the financial committee. On June 26th, Henry Cook rejected this proposal on record. This made it, okay, so you know how you got a job and you gotta call your manager. So you got your manager real phone number and you got a work phone number. So you call him on the work phone, yo, da da da. So he like, nah, you can't do that. But then he double back on you on the real phone. He like, yeah, bro, just be back in the hour. You good. But on the work phone, it's on record that he said you can't break the rules. That's how it was. So he Cook smart. Like he just trying to, okay, on record, we can't do this. Nah, that ain't a good idea. But behind the scenes, it was like, come on now. 1869, the trustees decided to purchase a new building. You know, bank already ain't profitable. Why not? I think that'd be good. The New York Times made a remark on this building. The board's decision to spend such a large amount of money on a building of no real necessity was not a prudent one. The deposits of free people did not deserve to be spent on such an extravagance, which I 1,000% agree. We're not profitable. We ain't making no money. Fuck it. Let's just get a new building. Why not? Trying to create generational wealth. So we got February 5th, 1870. We got Robert and Betsy Harris. They came in to open up an account at the Richmond, Virginia location. Remember, we had the meeting at the church with Albert and them, so the Richmond location, they opened up by now. So Robert is the dad. He opened up the account 2 days earlier. Today he was opening an account for his 2 children. So he got Mary Susan and we got Charles Harris. Those are 2 children. Robert and Betsy couldn't read, but his daughter could. Mary Susan could read. They put their job as going to school, and yes, I agree. School is a job. That boy, y'all know, like school ain't no boy. Getting their children acclimated with money at a young age, real definition of generational wealth, which I agree. Like this is what was going on at the bank. Like with these black people, they setting their people up, they setting themselves up, and they setting their kids up for the future. So I think that's pretty cool. And if you look, this is Robert Harris. He set up his account on February 3rd, and this is his documentation. And then the 2 days later, you got Mary Susan Harris, February 5th, and Charles Henry Harris. So these are 2 kids. They set up an account 2 days later. So I think that's pretty cool, man. Like we were doing good things. So, okay, that was cute. Mary Sue set up a little account, but you got Henry Cook on the background. In the background, he like, okay, how can I use Harry Susan money to make? I'm trying to get rich. We don't care about little Mary Susan. So January 1870, the board they put aside 100,000 for loans. Then in February they put aside 600,000. Keep in mind Congress got to approve this. And remember what I said in the beginning, the bank is not watched by the OCC, so that's basically like the overseers of banks at this time, and Congress not really looking. So the trustees, these business players, they really can do what they want. So they did this before getting approved from Congress. So they was like, okay, we gotta go to Congress to be able to take out loans for the bank, but we think they're gonna say yes. So let's just go ahead and get the money ready. Cook sees all these millions of dollars sitting in the free people's account. He like, okay, we about to. I don't care about these black people. I just know they putting money in the bank, and I'm about to use all this money to go. So he wanted Congress to allow the bank to give out business loans and for the trustees to have the ability to borrow funds at low interest rates. On the surface, it made sense. Remember in the beginning, the bank wasn't making no money, so it made sense. But in my opinion, it would have made sense if it was only where black people could loan in the bank, not business people doing all these crazy ventures that's gonna crash the bank. If you let black people borrow their own money and they mess it up, that's cool. But black people can't even loan the money out. They put money in the bank, but they couldn't even take out loans because remember the rules. You had to have double value to real estate. Most black people didn't have that back then. And you got people like Alvar and you got stuff like this. They agreed because they didn't know initially. I don't think they knew that Cooking was about to do all this. So like I said, to get a loan, you had to have real estate double the value of the loan. If I ask for a loan for 1,000, I gotta have $2,000 in real estate. And Eaton, the person that took the first illegal loan, was in charge of making sure that the loans were good. You see how this about to go. So blacks had millions of dollars being loaned, but most couldn't get a loan if they wanted to because they didn't own land. Mm-mm-mm. Congress approval. So you had Congress going back and forth. So Senator Simon Cameron, he was one of the people that was against this. He didn't like the idea, and he knew that the trustees were gonna do the wrong thing. He was like, nah, I don't trust them like that. Like, nah, I don't agree with this. His argument was using the real estate for collateral was a bad idea because real estate wasn't liquid, which made sense. Like, real estate is not that liquid. Oh, excuse me. So you had to evaluate the property, see how much it's worth. Is it even, you know what I'm saying? So it's a long process. That makes sense to me. There were a lot of objections, but they pushed it through eventually. So May 3rd, 1870, the bill was ratified. This is when we just fully tipped the scale over. It ain't no savings bank. It's on and popping now. This play had been in the work for over 2 years, and now it's in fruition. Even before May 6th, they had already started getting active. So even before Congress approved it, the bank had already started taking out loans. They held a meeting on April 13th. They thought the Congress vote was gonna be yes, so between March 3rd and April 2nd, they approved 15 loans. That's one loan for every 2 days. They're like, hey, you get a loan, you get a loan. Hey bro, you need some money? You come get a loan with us. So the common theme amongst the borrowers was businessmen around Washington. So around this time, Washington D.C. was starting to become like what it was, like a lot of buildings getting brought up. We had like Howard University. We had a lot of things going on around Washington at the time. And these folks would look at the Freedman's Bank as a place to get loans. Like, remember, it's not really a lot of oversight. They're not, and that's when I started questioning, like, why didn't Congress like look at it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they should have been paying attention to this from the beginning. And guess who wasn't getting loans? Blacks, the ones who money was being put into the bank. They couldn't even get loans. So, like I said, everybody get a loan. So we in March 1870, and now we done had $12,605,781 in deposits in the bank. That's almost $300 million in today's money. But you got these business people in here loaning out all of that money. They passing out loans like candy. But remember, you always got to go back. Just in life in general, you always got to say, like, what's your purpose? The main purpose of this bank was to help free people. If we're passing out all this money into bad business plays and the free people can't even loan their own money, how is this helping free people? The way they had it set up, the loans didn't have supervision. Remember, Eaton, one of the business players, he's over this. So of course he's gonna give loans to his friends and not really looking to it. You got people getting loans that don't even have that they not even checking to see if they got double the value real estate. Like it was just bad. Between June 8th and July 14th, 1870, the bank loaned $174,000 to the borrowers. They weren't allowed in news publications, but the advertising for African Americans to do business with the bank was still being pushed heavy. So all these black people money getting loaned out, but in the news they still telling people, "Hey, come set up your money with the Freedman's Bank." It was like a big club. The big players were allowed to get in on the loans without much push. So it's relationships. Y'all know how it be. When you got money, you know people, you can just do what you want, and that's basically what these business players were doing. They didn't check to see if it had real estate. If it was like, okay, let's say I'm eating, and my homeboy, not my homeboy, my business partner, I'm like, hey bro, he asked for a $4,000 loan, and he pay it back. He's supposed to pay it back in 3 months. Okay, cool. 3 months come, and hey bro, you got that 4,000? Nah, bro. Shit, you good? Actually, pay me back in another 3 months. And I said 4,000, just pay me back 2,000. Like it was a lot of that going on. And you remember, the only collateral was supposed to be real estate. If you had double the value of real estate, they had people using stocks and bonds as collateral. That's just breaking the rules. And the trustees received loans as well. Remember what we said, trustees could not receive loans. So remember y'all, it was all beautiful in the beginning. We had E9T Wright. My boy put a big bankroll in the bank, everything good. Mary Susan Harris's, they come in the bank, they set up accounts with everything good. Now it's just everything is not good no more. Remember John Albert, he started the bank. He was the president while all of this was going on, but his focus was in so much other places. Like remember he was with the Freedmen's Bureau, he had family, so he ain't really he ain't really objecting to any of this either. Then we got Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was basically like the Michael Jackson at this time. He was super duper popular. Black people love him. He was the most photographed person in the 19th century. Over Lincoln, over all the military generals, all of that. He was the one. So he supported the bank. He had newspaper. He would talk about the bank all the time. Talk about the numbers of the bank, how many people in deposits in. What that say right there? And he reiterated the bank's advertising slogan. He even set up an account for himself, and he joined the bank as a trustee. But one thing Douglas didn't realize was he didn't know all this was going on in the background with all these loans and all this mismanagement of the money. He didn't know. Oh, my bad, y'all. So we all know. So eventually they got we in 1872. They've been loaning out money like crazy. Now it's like okay, now the bank want to watch them. So in March 1872, the bank had 31 million in deposits. That's almost $1 billion in today's money. So February 7th, 1871, a year before, Henry Cook requested a loan of 50,000 to the finance committee. He would use the Northern Pacific Railroad bonds as collateral. Remember, for one, he already breaking the rules. You're only supposed to use real estate as bonds. So railroads was the big thing at this time. I forgot. I think it was the Union Pacific Railroad that was created like 10 years earlier. That did its thing. So now they got another Pacific Railroad. So you remember they were trying to build all these railroads across the country so they can do what they do, like travel, move all the stuff. So Edgar Ketchum, he was a part of the finance committee, and he was a good person. Like he supported black people. He was like, why y'all? What's up with all these loans? Like he didn't really like Cook either. So he's like, I'm in my head like shit. Where he been at all this time? Like it's a little too late now. So they went back and forth on why Cook should get the loan. So really being honest, Cook was like he knew how to talk. Like he was talking about one. He was bringing up the company was through black people. So essentially, if y'all let me loan this money, this is helping black people. And he was basically lying. So the Northern Pacific Railroad, uh, him and his brother, remember they were millionaires in the Civil War, so they big players. They was him and his brother had a company, J and Cook. It was his brother's company, but he was involved with it. They was real big on this Northern Pacific Railroad. But initially they couldn't raise a lot of capital to get it rolling. So Cook was saying like this loan would be an investment to it, but really it was a bailout because they couldn't raise no capital. So he really needed this money. A year later, so now this is 1871 when all this happened. They asked Cook to pay the loan back. I don't even think he paid it back. And Cook and Huntington, remember, I ain't say too much about Huntington, but he was basically one of the ones that was with Cook and Eaton doing all the crazy shit. They was like, okay, it's time to go. They on us. So the real reason was never told why Cook left, but you can obviously tell like the spot started getting hot. He like, okay, I'm good now. And then you had Eaton leave out as well. So the big players, the ones that were doing all the loaning and stuff, they gone. But by then, it's sort of kind of too late. And right behind Eaton, you had his nephew come take Eaton's spot. So come on now. So what's next? Now they like, okay, the trustees like, okay, we got my bad, I can't let me pull it down. We gotta start looking into what's been going on with the bank. So they hired a special department. So in October 1872, they have the report from the inspections highlighted that the finance committee didn't follow rules on lending money out. But you remember, I'm talking. I said the big player, the managers of the bank was doing all this loaning. They didn't even blame them. They put the blame on the cashiers. So we got the cashiers at all these different branches. They were acting up, but I think the blame still should have been on the big players too. It should have been on everybody. And then you had Albert as the bank's president. He was blamed as well, which I agree. You're the president. You shouldn't be letting this be going on. Like, I know you got your obligations in other areas, but this is people money you playing with. You need to really be paying attention to this. So Despite all this going on, you still had people putting their money in the bank. Like black people not knowing all this going on in the background. And despite cooking them gone, people were still getting loans from the bank. Remember, I said they spending 1,500 a year on advertisement. So in the newspapers, they don't see that the bank is really like going down. It was never a problem getting people to join. Like black people definitely needed a place to put their money. It was more of like their bank didn't have no oversight and regulation. Like people weren't looking over the bank. You remember, I told y'all, Congress never paid attention. And now when they do pay attention, it's sort of kind of too late. So Congress finally comes in. So on January 20th, 1873, Congress examined the bank. February 3rd, 1873, they finished with the report. So trustees and the cashiers, they weren't operating in a way to help the depositors. They basically loaning out this money. They were probably stealing. They had a lot going on. And remember, we talked about a building that the bank had purchased. They purchased another building on top of that. So they just weren't really making good decisions. The main thing is helping black people have a safe place to put their money. They weren't that wasn't their focus. They had over $2.5 million in outstanding loans. I told y'all they lent money out to everybody. And with a lot of these loans, they weren't getting paid back. A lot of loans were approved without real estate being a collateral. So Congress is exposing all this, but they like it's not over yet. There's still a chance. So Congress said Congress needed to establish the interest rate for which depositors would receive. But to that point, it had been the trustees. Congress also said that the charter needed to be changed, so the rules needed to be changed. And with the changing of the charter, the trustees still were acting up. And they also said the bank would need to have a surplus for future losses. So, like I said, Congress exposing all of this, but they like, okay, y'all, it's still a chance. Let's turn it right. So then we have the Panic of 1873. This is basically like, oh wait, oh the great. This is that in 1873. So the First National Bank that was cooking his brother's company, that was their bank. They declared bankruptcy. So I think what initiated was something happened in Europe, like a stock market crash or something, and it was like a domino effect. It caused all these banks and businesses to fail, and Jay Cook and Company. So this was Henry Cook and his brother's company. They were taking out all these loans with the NPRR. They was very, very connected to the Freedman's Bank, but it was never in the news like that. So people didn't realize that Freedman's Bank was affected at first. So eventually it got to the news that like, okay, the Freedman's Bank is affected by all this. Like this is just everything's going crazy. So people started taking all their money out of the bank. Depositors, like the black people that were putting their money in the bank, they were scared they weren't gonna be able to access their money. The trustees, so you got all these, they call it bank runs. When people come take all their money out of the bank, it's called a bank run. If you like most banks don't have the money of where they didn't deposit all their money, so it's sort of kind of one of the things where they move off of faith like this will never happen. So the trustees needed to slow down. Like they needed to tell people they needed they needed a way to like slow down all these people trying to get their money out because really they didn't have the money in the bank. So Albert tried to go to New York to sell the bank's bonds, but that didn't work. So the bank came up with an idea like you got to start giving 30 days notice and you got to give 60 days notice to withdraw money in certain branches. So imagine like you got your money in the bank, you try to go get it out, and they tell you you can't withdraw your money to 60 days. That's crazy. Like, what if you got your rent due next day and you can't get your money out of the bank? Like, this is what really was going on. So December 1873, the bank started closing branches. They also trying to like fight back. So they trying to sell some of their assets so they can have some money. So January 24th, 1874, Congress looked at the bank again. They had 3.12 million in assets and 3.33 million in liabilities. So the bank is still not profitable. The bank is after what 9, 8 years, they still like in the red. On February 14, 1874, Congress come up again. So now they go into the branches. They really looking in. So between February and April 5th, Congress they went to more than 15 branches across the North and South. They really trying to see like what's really going on. They stayed at these branches for 2 to 3 weeks. They were looking at the books, interviewing the cashiers, looking at the depositors. They looking at everything. And then so the St. Louis branch gave like a highlight on like the bank. The depositors had deposited over 800,000 into this branch. Cashiers was a great example of a great employee. Like he kept the books clean. He had a good relationship with the depositors. Like he was doing what he was supposed to do. The examiner was surprised by how the depositors' relationship with the money grew. Like black people, they were starting to learn. And then it comes back to bite them because like black people couldn't receive loans. So if I go bank with somebody and I want to get a loan, if I'm put my money in this bank and I'm a good customer, I should be able to receive a loan. So black people would just go to another bank. And the St. Louis branch was a prime example that the free people they weren't the problem. Like you'll see like Congress they'll start and other people they'll be like, oh black people shouldn't have trusted to put their money in the bank. But it's like y'all were marketing to black people to join. Like it wasn't like black people came to y'all, like y'all came up to the black people. People weren't paying back their loans they received from the bank. The trustees didn't listen to the recommendations. So the bank is just going down and down and down. Depositors took out more than $1.5 million in the 18 months after the first examination for Congress. So people taking their money out the bank. And I want to show y'all this. So this is the amount of the loans. And this is and the dark part is the amount that is like hold up. The dark part no the light part shows the amount like that it was never paid back. So these people weren't paying their money back on the loans. So hold on, did I see that already? Cash. Okay, I already went over that. Let me go back. Show y'all something. And this is one of the like examinations, but it's hard to read. But they was basically exposing what was going on. So last ditch attempt, Albert he steps down as a president, but we got Frederick Douglass. Remember Frederick Douglass, black people love him. He's like Superman around this time for the black people. He comes around and he's the bank president. But what he doesn't realize is they sort of kind of set him up because they never tell him that the bank is doing this bad. So he coming in and it's like a burning fire, but he don't see the fire. And the white people sort of kind of looking at it as a setup play because when the bank failed, they just put the blame on Douglas because he was the president at the time. So he didn't really know. So a couple weeks after he become president, they have a meeting. Douglas was told that the bank needed 10,000 or it was over. Like the bank would be insolvent, they had to close it down. But the crazy thing about this meeting is that none of the other trustees would loan the money. So John Albert insisted Douglas loan the money. They eventually paid him back, but that just really shows y'all like, okay, really a lot of these people it seemed like Albert started turning to a bad person because Douglas was the most famous person around these times, but he was not rich. So the fact that he even gave him $10,000 just says a lot about his character. And to speak on Albert was he invested 3,000 into Eaton's company in the early 1860s. He turned that 3,000 to 31,000. So Albert got money around this time. So I don't know why he couldn't put some of his money, but he telling Douglas to put his money, and none of the trustees would put up their money, but they telling Douglas to put up their money. Like I think that's pretty lame. The bank had over $1 million in loan, and this not even taking into account like all the loans that was recorded off the books. So basically, the bank is just going down and down and down, and Douglas didn't even realize it. Like he was sort of kind of thrown into the fire. So Douglas is like, okay, man, all this going on, we still gonna try to save the bank. So he tell them straight up, like, okay, the bank is bad, but we're gonna turn this around. So Even after he said that, the trustees like, oh man, you ain't do good enough. The people not gonna be like, I don't know, for whatever reason they were just on Douglas, but like I don't know. So the depositors they weren't right here and that, and they still trying to take their money out of the bank. But remember they got the rule where it's the 60-day notice. So it's like, man, it's like, dang. But you know what's even more messed up is like the black people had to do 60-day notices, but people who could take out their money out the bank immediately was the white business place. So the white business people. So you did have a couple of white people that had set up accounts with the bank, but they could take their money out. That is crazy, bro. Like, I don't, man, come on now. So we got the bank closing. So in July 1874, they made a decision to close the bank down. And this was the letter Douglas wrote to Congress. I cannot read cursive to save my life, but they were like, okay, it's time to shut it down. So with shutting it down, you still got all these people that owed their money. All these black people. You remember all this money? They didn't put in over $1 billion of today's money at this point. They need to get their money back. So the bank had to set up 3 people to be bank commissioners. So their job was to get the depositors' money back, and they had to basically liquidate the bank's assets. So turn the bank's assets into money so they could give it to the depositors. After finding the commissioners, Congress believed it would take over 2 years to do a full assessment of all 34 branches. Now, I want you to think about that. Let's say you you work at the laundromat or something back then around these times, you've been putting your money in the bank. And these folks tell you, let's say you got 5,000 in the bank, and these folks tell you, well, it's gonna be over 2 years before you get your 5,000 back. You done put your life savings in this bank. You know how crazy it is, man? So the commissioners, they had to do, man, they had a long job. They had to sell the bank's assets. They got to keep up with Congress, and they still had to compensate. So it was over 61,000 depositors, therefore 3 million in their accounts. So news reports said the depositors get 93 cents back for every dollar deposited, which I still think that's bad, but that's not that okay. I didn't deposited $1,000. I get 9,300 back. I mean, I get $930 back. I'm mad that I lost my 70, but okay, I still get most of my money, so I'm cool. I'm chilling. So, like I said, they set Douglas up for the play. They put a lot of blame on him because he was the president, like he the face of it. And what he said was, it has been the black man's cow, but the white man's milk. Bad loans and bad management have been the death of it. I was ignorant of its real condition when elected the president. So Douglas, he said this to somebody, and that's what he said. Like, man, I was set up. I didn't know. And you could like, if you look at his writings and his books and things, he talks about it over the years. Like, he genuinely didn't know. When the depositors came to get their money, they couldn't. The bank didn't have the funds. So the depositors getting their money back. So the commissioners, like I said, they had a lot to do. You remember we talked about the passbook you had. They told the depositors to submit their passbook to their local branches so they can get their money back from their account. Despite all of this, you still had trustees taking out loans. So you still like, okay, all this mess going on, the trustees like, let me get my last little bit so I can, you feel me? So time went on, depositors still hadn't received their money back. So the bank closed in 1874. A year later, we had November 1875, the commissioners offered a deposit 20% dividend payment. So let's say I'm E9 right. How much did E9 put in? What did he put in? He put in $1,000. So I got my $1,000 in there. And over time, he probably put in more. So let's say E9 Wright got $10,000 in the Mobile, Alabama branch. They say, okay, you get 20% back, Mr. Wright. So I got my life savings in here. I mean, he a farmer. He working hard. He ain't do nothing wrong. And y'all telling him he only get $2,000 out of his $10,000 back. Like, that's horrible. And then at this time, it was a lot of the Republicans and the Northerners. They were the ones that had got the bank started and whatnot. So the Democrats using this as a play to like get back at them with political points. Like, black people, y'all shouldn't trust these people. Look what they did to y'all. And Alfred never took any blame for the going with the wrongdoing of the bank. Like, the more time went on, like eventually I thought Albert was a good person, but the more it went on, like, I just didn't feel like he was. I don't know, bro. He just didn't. He did a lot that like just didn't help the bank or help black people in general towards the end. Like, I don't know what he had going on. And they questioned Cook. Henry D. Cook, remember him? But yeah, I remember he was good at dodging answers. Like he knew how to talk. So they never charged any of these people for their wrongdoings. With things shifting in the South badly for black people, the positives hope to get their money back would get lower and lower. Remember, they had a lot going on back then. So you remember Lincoln was killed. So Johnson became president. And there was another president as well, but a lot of like racial violence down south and stuff. So they weren't. I guess Congress focused on giving black people their money back, and they released their last deposit in 1883. Their depositors who could prove they had money in their account received a 7% dividend. Though it was many attempts for various people to get their money back, the government officially closed the issue. So at most they had where you okay, so we got $10,000 E9 Wright account. The most they gave back was 62%. So E9 Wright would have only got 6,200 back, and the 4,000 he just had to take, if that. So let's say he lost his passbook or something like that. Like, I don't know, man. That's just really horrible. Like, it was only 10% of black people that had an account at this time, but there's still a lot of people that just lost their money, their life savings, and they were told to put their money in this bank. It ain't like they was, forced to do it. Like they didn't like they want to do it. Like they did need a place to put their money, but they obviously they wouldn't have put their money in there if they know they were just gonna be stolen. And then what's crazy, the white people didn't even go to jail for it. Like they didn't get charged for it or nothing. Like that's crazy. And this is just like a lot of the articles this is a lot of articles of where like people was this is what they were talking about. So this 1874, they showing the actual numbers of the bank. Oh, now they want to start putting the numbers of the bank in the news. By then it's too late. And this was a Savannah newspaper in 1899, and it shows the depositors. So these dividends were declared as one of following 20%. So that's 20% won in 1875. They had a 10% win in 1878, 10% in 1880, and a 15% in 1882. One of the final dividends of 7% May 12th, 1883. So like I said, the most you could get back was 62% of your money. That is horrible, bro. Like that is crazy. Depositors who have received the five dividends are not benefited by this act. Bro, that's pitiful, bro. I ain't gonna lie. And then this was in 1910. So even in the 1900s, you still had people still trying to get their money back. The company fails out on Sunday. But yeah, you see this one talking about like it was still talked about in the 1900s. Well, I want let me go to. Oh, there we go. So y'all remember Mary Susan Harris? Y'all remember the little girl? Her daddy had set her up an account. So in 1880, she's 21 years old. When the bank failed, she had $26 in her account. She was able to get 13.45 back in dividend repayment. So she did get her 62% back. But that's still like real bad. Like half her money, she's you know what I'm saying? Like that's horrible. She was one of the depositors who couldn't fully recover their funds. The bank had three point so at the time it closed, the bank had 3.5 million in outstanding loans from 1,000 from 1,000. My bad, y'all. Like I didn't messed up. It was 1,000 borrowers, not 11,000. So 95% of the loans were never paid. So these white people, they just took complete advantage of these black people money, and they didn't even get in trouble for it. Another hurdle African Americans had to face in the midst of everything else going on. Like, think about it. A lot of people didn't even know the Freedman's Bank was going on. We look at it back then for all the violence and stuff. So they had to deal with all the violence and all that, and they had to deal with getting their money took from these white people. And I emphasize it's a good thing that all the black people didn't put their money in the bank. Like I said, it was only 10% of black people, but that's still we that 10% we still want to acknowledge like that's horrible. Like we don't care if it was 1%, we don't care if it was one person. And even in the 20th century, you still had people fighting to get their money back. So you had J.B. Metz. So this was 1937. This was the Great Depression. Who hit the Great Depression the hardest? Black people. So she still needed money. So she sent a letter to President Roosevelt in 1937 about being able to get the money back that her mom and grandmother had deposited into the bank. The bank deposit book. So her mom and her grandmama had deposited money in the bank. So they had $962.28 in their account. So this is what we talking about generational wealth. Her mom and her grandma gone now, but they had that money set up for her. And the OCC had responded saying They weren't looking into individual inquiries regarding the bank's closing. She wouldn't be able to recover the money because there's no further assets to be collected. So she couldn't even get her money back, man. Like, that's just horrible. Like, this just is, these are these are just a couple examples out of like thousands and thousands of people that couldn't get their money back. And this shows the deposit payment. So 20% were paid, 10% were paid, and 38% that was never paid back. Like I said, bro, I just think that's horrible, man. And then you got this is one of the dividend payments back. So you got Robert, I forgot. I see Robert, but I don't know how to say that. What is it? But he got 20 cents back on a dividend payment. And what year was it? In 1880. So 1880, he got 10% back. That means he had $1 in his account. At that time, that's probably around like what, like $500 or probably like a couple hundred, but that's still better than nothing. But man, I want my all my money back. Like man, I think this story just shows like an example, like what black people had to deal with throughout history when it comes to like recent history, really. Because you think 150 years ago is a long time ago, but if you look at it from a generational perspective, it's really not. But how y'all feel about this? How y'all feel about the Freedman's Bank? Like, put in the comments. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in the beginning, I was very optimistic about it. Obviously, when I heard of the bank, I knew from the beginning like black people weren't. They got their money stolen. That's how I heard of the story from the beginning. But just looking at the perspective of like, say I didn't know in the beginning, everything did seem good, and over time you just see how these white people just took advantage. And it's a fact that black people didn't get their money back, and these white people didn't go to jail for it. So it's like, damn, it's just really bad. And this is one example of many of like how black people have been, taken advantage of in recent history. And one more thing before I go, I know I've been talking y'all heads out. If you don't watch this whole video, appreciate you for sure. But I want to show y'all, you can look up like, was your family a member of the Freedmen's Bank? So I had a family reunion this past summer. Let me see. I don't even got the book on me. Dang. But I had it's a book and it showed like generation by generation, like our family tree. So in 1865, my great 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 grandpa, his name was Pompey Foster. So a lot of what I learned is a lot of people back then was named Pompey. Like that was a very popular name back then. That was like, but you can look up and see if any of your family members had an account with the Freedmen's Bank. So I had found this website and it's called familysearch.org. So I had went to a family reunion like last summer, and at the family reunion we had got like a book, and it was basically like generation by generation. So it was my great 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 grandpa. He was born, I want to say he was born around like 1853, and 1865 he was able to become free because the laws and stuff to let people be free. But I was looking up to see, did he have an account with the Freedmen's Bank, and when I looked, I wasn't able to find it. But I also got my family. I got my dad's side of the family, they from the north, so I'm gonna ask about my ancestors on that side. But how you do it is you go to familysearch.org and you create an account. It's free, it's real easy. And what you do is you go to search and you go to records. And this how I was able to pull up like all the information, like all the bank accounts for like Enon Wright and Betsy Harris and all them as well. So what you do, you went to search and you went to records, and then you go down and you type in Freedman's Bank, and it's gonna pull up. And now you just search your family member's name. So like I said, I looked up my great grandpa already, excuse me, and he didn't pop up, but like just show Enon Wright because I know for a fact he'll pop up. So you put in their name and you look up the state. So you remember Enon Wright was from Alabama. You look it up, you search. And if they did have an account with the bank, it'll pop up. So I think that's really, really cool. Like, go check and see that any of y'all family members have accounts. Obviously, now that we know the story, we wouldn't want them to have an account. But I mean, it's history. Like, we can't change it. So there'll be, and you just pull it up like that. And as I can see, like Enon Wright pulled up. But like I said, man, I think that's pretty cool. And if you don't watch this whole video, man, I really appreciate y'all. I hope I didn't bore y'all to death. If y'all have any questions, please reach out. And let me know how y'all feel in the comments. Like, it really sad, obviously, but it to me it's cool in the aspect that I like history and I like Black history too. And I think this is one of the things where it's not really talked about as much, so we could shine that light on it today. But appreciate y'all, man. Y'all stay blessed.